Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, the guy who essentially bought Donald Trump an election, the guy who regularly reposts racist and fascist conspiracy theories, who holds no elected office and no Senate-confirmed position, contra the U.S. Constitution, who regularly talks on the phone with foreign leaders of America's adversaries, whose business interests around the globe make him a walking, talking intelligence risk. That man cashed in on his MAGA investment in a new way today. This morning, he arrived at the Pentagon like it's one of his subsidiaries, like one of the many companies he runs, welcomed by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth to receive, according to multiple reports, classified briefings on the workings of the most powerful military in human history. Multiple officials told the New York Times yesterday Hegseth and two top admirals were set to present Musk with details on the U.S. plan to counter China in the event of a military conflict between the two countries. According to the Times, it was unclear what the impetus was for providing Musk such a sensitive briefing. Trump and Hegseth both called the story fake news, but shortly after their denials, the Wall Street Journal confirmed it with their sources. Musk to receive top-secret briefing on U.S. war plans for China. The Trump team denied those reports, but as they started to get blowback, why on earth Musk would have access to this classified briefing? Trump then insisted he didn't clear Musk to see the United States' top-secret contingency plans for a possible future war with China.
You guys are denying this New York Times report that Elon Musk was going to be shown a 20 to 30-page presentation about a theoretical war plan against China. Why not just show it to Elon?
Because I don't want to show it to anybody.
Okay. So still, Musk spent 90 minutes today with Hegseth at the Pentagon. You can see them shaking hands as Musk left. He reportedly told the defense secretary, if there's anything I can do to be helpful, I'd like to see you. Moments later, when a reporter asked what the two had discussed, the billionaire responded, why should I tell you? Afterwards, Hegseth joined Trump in the Oval Office, where they gave contradictory statements about how Musk was a true blue patriotic American and also a deeply conflicted businessman with overseas interests who can't be trusted with American war plans.
I don't want to show that to anybody, but certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price for helping us cut costs, and he's doing a great job. He's finding tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. But I certainly wouldn't want, Elon has businesses in China, and he would be susceptible perhaps to that.
Elon Musk is a patriot. Elon Musk is an innovator. Elon Musk provides a lot of capabilities our government and our military rely on, and I'm grateful for that. We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about DOGE, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. The rest of that reporting was fake. There was no war plans. There was no Chinese war plans. There was no secret plans.
I might add that I think Elon, if they ever wanted to do that, I think Elon wouldn't do it. I think he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't want to put himself in that position.
You follow all that? I think I did. Like, it was all fake news, but also they wouldn't do it, but also maybe they canceled it when the heat got too hot. You catch Trump's last point there? Elon would never put himself in that position. For the record, the Wall Street Journal reported that Musk, according to one person familiar, was going to receive the top-secret briefing on China because he asked for one. Nobody can say for sure if Musk's sensitive Pentagon briefings today did include Chinese war plans or what they included. Trump and Hegseth deny it. They aren't exactly the most credible sources when they just yell fake news. But here's what's interesting. This is really the key point. All of this sort of weird back and forth, self-contradictory sort of, oh, no, we would never do that. Those denials do show they do understand the problem here, right? Like even Donald Trump, it would not sit well with most Americans because, as Donald Trump notes, Elon's business in China makes it a gargantuan conflict of interest. China is the second largest market for Musk's Tesla car business. Did you know that? Do you know that Musk has multiple Tesla factories in China, including the company's largest production facility in the world, which you can see in this video, produced by China's state-run media company? Okay? That facility produced half of all Tesla cars in the world last year. Musk has staked Tesla's future on its operations in China. And this is an enormous vulnerability for him because right now, Tesla sales are plunging, especially in China. They used to be the hottest electric car in the world, but now they have lots of competition. They are getting their butts kicked in China by homegrown car maker BYD, company started as a battery maker, who has eaten Tesla's market share with cheaper cars that don't regularly combust or plow into traffic. This week, BYD unveiled a battery system that can charge an electric car in 5 minutes, roughly the same amount of time it takes to fill up a tank of gas. As a result, Tesla's China shipments dropped by half in February from a year earlier, just over 30,000 cars. That's the lowest monthly figure since July of 2022. And of course, this is part of a bigger story about just how brittle Elon Musk's wealth really is. Tesla is spiraling everywhere. The company just announced a recall of all of its Cybertrucks to repair body panels that won't stay on. That recall also tipped reporters off to how many Cybertrucks the secretive company has actually ever sold, which is less than 50,000. Then there are the protests, not just in the U.S., but worldwide demonstrations and boycotts of Tesla to oppose Musk's one-man war on the federal government, including his dalliances abroad, where he, like, for instance, endorsed the far-right party in Germany. Competitors are now encouraging Tesla owners to trade in their cars, and owners are doing that at a record pace. Tesla had accounted for a majority of Musk's wealth until this week, but now its stock has plummeted, over 40% of its value gone in the last 2 months, 40%. In an all-hands meeting this week, Musk, back at Tesla, begged employees to, quote, hang on to your stock. But get this, okay? In the past 3 months, top officials in Tesla, people at the top of the company, they have sold more than 745,000 shares in the company. In that same period, they have bought 0 shares of the company they work for. Not even a shameless Tesla sales pitch by the American president on the White House lawn can goose Musk's sales numbers. Like his wealth, Musk's mystique rests largely on the success of Tesla. And listen, that success is now anything but assured. Imagine how desperate and erratic that can make a man who's already, I don't know, at least by my perception, kind of desperate and erratic. A man who's been deputized to act as an extra-legal government enforcer, whose operatives are tapping into all of our data and sensitive systems, who, at least this morning, seemed headed to the Pentagon to hear all about our secret war plans with China, a country that represents Elon Musk's last best hope for saving his shaking business empire.
My whole adult life, we have thought of attacking Social Security as the third rail of American politics. You touch it, and it is a guaranteed political death. Well, we are now witnessing the strongest test we've ever had of that aphorism as Donald Trump grabs that third rail firmly and unmistakably. Trump has announced plans to fire thousands of people who work at the Social Security Administration, more than 12% of its staff. He has released plans to shut down dozens of local Social Security offices across the country. Simultaneously, Trump is also making changes that will force millions more people to have to go to Social Security offices in person rather than dealing with the agency over the phone as they can now. That means millions more elderly people and people with disabilities will be forced to somehow make their way physically to a Social Security office in person if they can find one, because they're closing lots of offices, because they will need to get help in person from a Social Security staffer, provided they can find one who hasn't been fired. The Trump administration also wants to give Elon Musk's group of Doge staffers access to Social Security's database of incredibly sensitive personal information. As we covered here on the show last night, for now, a judge has blocked Doge from getting that information. Today, Trump's acting director of Social Security responded to that ruling by throwing a tantrum and saying if that ruling stands, he will shut down the Social Security Administration altogether. And you don't have to be among the 70-plus million Americans who currently receive Social Security to be mad about any of that, right? Making grandma wait in new lines is not nice, right? Making people, like, check themselves out of the hospital or the nursing home to somehow make their way to a faraway office that hasn't been shut to wait for hours to do something they used to be able to do on the phone, it's not nice, right? Pitching a fit and saying you'll just shut down the whole administration is not nice. It ought to be obvious, right? Nobody needs to spell that out for you. Unless you're Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary. I don't know if you saw this today. I feel like in any other moment, this would have been wallpaper all over the American media. But this statement today from Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary about what Trump is doing to Social Security, this tape is such a political disaster. I feel like I almost have to close my eyes because I can't bear to watch it. Just, here you go. Check it out.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
Howard Lutnick, Wall Street titan, Trump cabinet member, saying that his mother-in-law wouldn't call and complain. She'd just wait until next month, see if her check came then. Anybody complaining about not getting a check is obviously a criminal. How does that comport with what you understand of the reality of getting a Social Security check? And who in your life you know gets a Social Security check? Mr. Lutnick went on to say that anybody like Elon Musk, who had been inside a payment system like PayPal, quote, knows the easiest way to find the fraudster is to stop payments and listen, because whoever screams is the one stealing. This is not like a random podcaster dude. This is cabinet official in the Trump administration while they are devastating Social Security. Yeah, maybe it gets easier if you hear it again. Here's one more time.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining. And if all the guys who did PayPal, like Elon knows this by heart, right? Anybody who's been in the payment system and the process system knows the easiest way to find the fraudster is to stop payments and listen.
Yeah.
Because whoever screams is the one stealing.
He's talking about Social Security checks to elderly and disabled people. Stop the payments and listen. Whoever screams, that's the one stealing. Try seeing that through the eyes of people, even just people in the news. Maybe you can't imagine real human beings that you've met, right? But try seeing it through the eyes of people in the news whose Social Security checks have, for one reason or another, been cut off, and who are not the mother-in-law of the Commerce Secretary for Donald Trump. For instance, take Ned Johnson of Seattle. You might have seen his story going around this week after it was written up in the Seattle Times. Ned Johnson was very mistakenly declared deceased by the Social Security Administration. It was just a mistake. He is not dead. There's the headline in the Seattle Times. Here's a, quote, dead person on Social Security in Seattle with plenty to say. After this mistaken classification, the bank then deducted $5,201 in Social Security deposits from his family bank account. Mr. Johnson is 82 years old. He spent nearly 3 weeks on the phone, followed by 4 hours in person before he could straighten it out. And even though he himself could handle the interruption in his Social Security check, Mr. Johnson said he understood what could be at stake for other people. He said, quote, when I was in that line, I was thinking that if I was living solely off Social Security, I could be close to dumpster diving about now. Or consider James McCaffrey of Oklahoma City. His benefits were also cut off by mistake. And even though he, too, financially could handle the interruption, he says he understood that for other people, this would be a severe crisis.
You interrupt that for 7 days, 2 weeks, or even longer, and they're in bad trouble. They could be out of a house. They could be out of food. I don't know.
It ought to be obvious, right? The right way to approach the needs and expectations and earned income, of millions of retired and disabled people, right? They have good reason now to be worried about their checks, not least because, you know, the administration is hacking away at government on a daily basis. No one should need to spell out for you, right, at least what you ought to say and not to say. But here's Howard Lutnick saying these people don't really need that money, If any of them complain when we cut it off, which we should, then you know they're criminals. This should haunt the Trump administration, and it may already be starting to.
Voters across the country are making it clear that they want to be heard even when their elected officials do not have the courage to show up. So progressive grassroots groups like Indivisible decided to help them, organizing so-called empty chair town halls where concerned citizens can speak their mind to Republicans in Congress who've done nothing to stand up against the Trump administration and to Elon Musk, even if those Republicans aren't physically there. Indivisible says that Republican Senator Susan Collins, who represents the blue state of Maine, is up for re-election in 2026 and hasn't had a town hall for Maine voters in over 20 years. Here's what one voter asked Senator Collins' empty chair last night.
My question for you is very similar to so many people have asked you tonight. Where have you been? When Elon Musk gave his Nazi salute on stage and was celebrated by your party, where were you? Where were you to stand up to say that white supremacy has no place in this country? Where the hell were you?
In upstate New York, voters confronted Congresswoman Elise Stefanik's empty chair, even though Stefanik won't be in Congress much longer since she's been tapped to be Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. In Florida's 7th congressional district, last night, 150 people showed up to yell at Republican Representative Corey Mills' empty chair. In North Carolina's 9th congressional district last night, Republican Representative Richard Hudson's empty chair got an earful about Musk's attack on veterans.
If I have the opportunity to speak to Richard Hudson, I'm going to ask him, how the hell do you get the gall to call yourself the veterans representative while you sit silent while Elon Musk and Donald Trump fired over 6,000 VA workers and they're planning to fire another 80,000?
And in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, as we showed you last night, voters had plenty to say to Republican Derek Van Orden's empty chair. With their Republican congressman a no-show, Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski stepped in to field the voters' questions.
People of Eau Claire and the people of the 3rd CD deserve answers when a representative votes on a bill to cut $1.5 trillion. And this money is going to impact essential services that Western Wisconsinites rely on.
He says the budget is not meaning that we're going to cut Medicare and Medicaid. Well, I'd like to see that in writing, that he's going to oppose any bill that cuts funding.
My question for Mr. Van Orden is, where are you and how can your constituents reach you?
Where are you and how can your constituents reach you? Joining us now is the Wisconsin Secretary of State, Sarah Godlewski. Sarah, we saw you last night. We were airing this stuff, and we had said that Van Orden's not there, but there was somebody standing in the front who was receiving the questions, and that was you. You were accommodating the idea that voters have, I don't know if it's a right where it's written down, but have an expectation in America that they are able to speak to, access, and hold their elected officials to account.
No, that's exactly right, Ali, and thanks so much for having me. I mean, I've now done 2 town halls this week in my hometown district in Western Wisconsin, and people are showing up because they believe in fairness and they also believe in accountability. They are seeing how Elon Musk, this unelected billionaire, is making cuts to vital programs that they rely on, while at the same time he's using the White House front lawn like it's some sort of Tesla showroom. And Wisconsinites are like, where's the accountability? Well, the accountability is with Derek Van Orden, who is their congressional representative, but he's nowhere to be found. He refuses to hold any in-person town hall meetings, and he's treating his important job more like he's part of the witness protection program instead of actually meeting with constituents who want to talk to him, and they deserve better.
And to be clear, because a number of Republicans are saying we're not going there because there are George Soros paid for activists who are running these things. We have watched these across the country. These are voters, these are veterans, these are people who live in rural America. In some cases like yours, the elected Secretary of State in the front of the room. This is not a George Soros-funded initiative. This is voters who would like answers about their veterans benefits and their Social Security and their Medicaid. And by the way, why Elon Musk is so influential in this government.
Well, that's exactly right. I showed up in my home district because I believe Western Wisconsinites deserve an elected official that's going to listen to them and is going to show up. And Western Wisconsinites were having these questions about Elon Musk's intent. And they should, because they're seeing that he has billions of dollars of government contracts, but yet he's willing to cut these vital programs because to him, they're just numbers on a balance sheet. But I'll tell you, they're not numbers on a balance sheet. They are veterans, they're farmers, they're students, they're healthcare providers. I mean, a farmer was sharing at our town hall yesterday that he bought energy efficient equipment because he was told that the government, there's a REAP program that will reimburse him for that. And DOGE just cut that program. So now he's on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that he was told the government would pay him back, and they're not going to do that. And as a farmer, he's already facing tariffs. He's not sure how he's going to pay his bills. And farmers are critical to our lifeline across the country, putting food on our tables. And some billionaire is dictating who's going to get money and who's not. Again, that's not what a democracy looks like.
Not just tariffs, but the USAID cuts. USAID provides food to countries that is grown in America. So farmers are losing those contracts. I just want to bring up something that has just happened. Donald Trump has posted on his social media, Wisconsin, there's a very important election for state Supreme Court on April 1st, and early voting is underway. He then goes on to endorse Brad Schimmel, who's running against what he calls the radical left liberal Susan Crawford. Important to note, Brad Schimmel is also financially supported by Elon Musk. There are canvassers in Wisconsin right now knocking on doors who are financially supported by Elon Musk. So there are all these concerns about George Soros and the left. In your state, there is actually an election on April 1st, and Elon Musk is very, very involved in it.
Well, there's not only an election on April 1st, I would say it's the most important election across the country because this will determine our Supreme Court, which is why Elon Musk is trying to buy it. He has already put over $13.5 million into this campaign because he knows Brad Schimmel, the conservative, can be bought. You know, Brad Schimmel was our attorney general here in Wisconsin, and he took money from Big Pharma, and then he tried to gut the ACA. And so he is just a pay-to-play politician. And there's one thing that I can tell you about Wisconsinites is they don't want billionaires running this country. They want to make sure it's elected officials. Susan Crawford is running. She's been a judge in our state and has ensured that the law actually works for the people, not for the most powerful. And when you are looking at the Supreme Court, who in 2020, we determined that Donald Trump did not he tried to overturn the election, and the Supreme Court, by one vote, that's it, made sure that his BS claims did not succeed. And so the stakes couldn't be any higher.
Wisconsin Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, good to see you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate your time.
We're joined by someone who knows all about these issues and has warned about them in film and in politics. Michael Moore, the Oscar-winning filmmaker, has campaigned in previous cycles with Bernie Sanders. He's, of course, an author and a popular Substack columnist. Welcome back.
Thank you, Ari.
Where do you want to begin, Michael? Go ahead.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, it's great seeing Bernie and AOC out there across the country. And it's starting to feel, I don't know, I should say this, it's way too early to talk about 2028 yet. Everybody's thinking about what we're going to do next year. I believe that Alexandria will be 35 by Inauguration Day in January of 2029. And perhaps historians will see this tour where Bernie and AOC barnstorm the country. Oligarchy versus democracy. And that introduced the idea of we need a whole new person, a kind of person in the White House that is going to fight for the people. And while Bernie may think, well, you know, maybe by 2028 he's going to be too old, you can see just how not old he is. It's just been amazing to watch the tour this week, and to think about that we have somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to be the voice of. We have two full generations now of millennials and Gen Zers that are mad as hell at the world that they're being handed by the generations before them. And I can't live through another election where people stay home like they stayed home this time. I'm talking about liberal, lefty, Democrats, independents, people that by the millions stayed home on November 5th. And that costs us the election. There's more of us than there are of them. You look at every poll on the issues, the majority of Americans agree with Bernie and me and AOC. And yet millions stayed home. That's on the Democrats, and that has to change. And I'll just say one more thing. What I love about the tour is that Bernie is putting forth the idea that the Democrats have let us down in such a profound way. We need people running for office as independents like Bernie does. He does just fine. Now, maybe in your state or your city, that's not the best thing to do. But less, you know, Bernie is not a member of the Democratic Party. Neither am I. And there's a reason for that. It should be evident by now. And we're not going to survive. If we think the Democrats are the cavalry and the cavalry is going to ride in and save us, that's not going to happen. Not with these Democrats. I'm sorry. I hate to say that, but we need more independent people. There are people watching me and you right now that need to think about running for office next year, local office, state office, Congress. We need to primary these Democrats that don't have the guts and the courage. Our country is being dismantled right now, and we are watching it. And for us to do nothing, for some of us who should be thinking about what we're going to do next year, that it's almost criminal that we are even just sitting here talking about this when we need to be out there. We should be in the streets. We should be running for office, and we should quit thinking the Democrats are going to save us. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. You're going to get a lot of emails and calls from people. Why are you having Michael Moore on? But I'm sorry. I can't go through another November 5th like we just went through. And in these 3-4 months since then, what we're watching happen every day, every hour, you turn on MSNBC and it's something else. What was it 2 hours ago? Oh, they're dismantling the civil rights office of the Department of Homeland Security. And if anything has proven that we need a civil rights office in Homeland Security, it's what has happened to Mahmoud Khalil in the last couple of weeks. This is the Columbia University graduate student who was arrested and disappeared to Louisiana, not committed a single crime, not accused of a single crime. All he has done is to try and stand up for his people, the Palestinian people, with his freedom of speech rights that he has as a legal permanent resident of the United States of America. And the fact that we have
I'll jump in, although I let you run it for a while, Michael.
No, thank you.
But you made a lot of good points. That issue you raised, along with the deportation clash across this whole week, is about whether we will have the liberty that the founding fathers set as a baseline and had to be expanded over time as we expanded who really was a human being. It's a longer history. But the core idea was you can't have a king snatch people up, accuse them of things, and disappear them, as you said. Now, if through a process you satisfy the requirements and the person has due process and rights and counsel, there are reasons why people, of course, can be removed. But you have to prove that. If you can't prove that, which they haven't had to because they deported these folks on the planes and the example you give, then anybody can be snatched up. I mean, that's the whole reason why these are question is king-like powers. Your first point is really profound. You say people might not like it, but the Republican Party was fraying, and it got a boost of MAGA which went against a lot of its core values, but became this cult of Trump. But it papered over that sclerotic party. And then people say he took over. And the Democrats, from what happened to Bernie, which we've covered in the initial time he ran against Clinton, to a lot of the other problems the party's had, also have these complete credibility issues with the public. So we're watching a public that doesn't think either party's that great. I could show you the numbers today, and I could show you the numbers a couple of years back. It's what you said. And so the larger grassroots question is who's going to step up and meet that. So I appreciate what you said there. I want to give you more time, and I want to show you something on prices because all the way back to Flint, Michigan, we ignore the working people at our peril in a country like this, as you've documented. And so here's the double talk from MAGA on what people do care about, which is jobs and prices.
Are you expecting agricultural products to be more expensive as a result of tariffs, Secretary?
When they voted in November of 2024, they knew that's what they were voting for. There may be an interim period as we're readjusting the entire economy. But listen, real change takes disruption.
I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one. I want on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, who uses the word? I started using the word. The groceries. Starting the day I take the oath of office, I will rapidly drive prices down.
Prices aren't down. Markets are down, and tariffs are up. Is this a bait and switch? Go ahead.
That was the word, groceries. Okay. Yeah, listen. This is the gift of Trump, if I could put it that way, that he has already started to turn his own people against him. They're not quite there yet, but when they start going to the doctor and there's no Medicaid payment, and they're going to have to pay that doctor for their children and all of that, just go down the whole list of things that it's going to cost them more and more money. It's going to be harder and harder to live. And they're going to understand that he's the one that made this happen. And maybe he's thinking, well, I'm really good at lying. And if you just say it long enough, price of eggs, price of eggs, price of eggs, price of eggs. That they'll go with that. I don't think so. I think the American people are smarter than that. And I know fellow liberals are watching this and going, Mike, no. But yes. And from, as you mentioned, Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan is the birthplace of the 8-month pregnant wife of Mahmoud Khalil. She was born and raised in Flint, Ari. She was a top student at Flint University of Michigan, Flint branch. Gave the graduation speech there about 8 years ago. She's now a dentist. She's Dr. Noor Abdallah from Flint, Michigan, American citizen. He's a permanent legal resident with a green card. And I'm sorry to go back to that, but I'm just saying that the people in the state of Michigan, which Trump won, in the Flint, Michigans, in the Grand Rapids, in the Pontiacs, all those places, he's not going to keep this up. They're already on to him. They're already on to Chainsaw Man. And I read this thing the other day, the Michigan Chainsaw Massacre, of how Michigan is already hurting by the things that he's done. People are wise. They will come along to this. They will realize this. The Republicans, there's this, what's his name, Andy Biggs. They're all getting just slammed at their town halls. He's doing a town hall. He said now that only Republicans can come to it. They're going to vet you and make sure only Republicans can get in the room. Andy Biggs, if you don't know, if you're watching this, is one of the 147 Republicans who, after a violent mob took over the United States Capitol on January 6th, and it took almost till late in the evening, near midnight, for the police and the National Guard to remove them from our Capitol. And then all the members of Congress and the senators came back in. And at 2 or so in the morning, now January 7th, 147 Republicans voted to overturn the 2020 election. They voted to overthrow the vote of the people. I'll exactly quote the New York Times. 147 Republicans who voted to, quote, overturn election results. And Reuters Republicans, 147 of them, voted to overturn the election. To me, I'm sorry, I was raised differently. That's the work of traitors. If you are voting, and you're voting just hours after an attempted overthrow of the United States Capitol, and then you show up and then you vote to say, no, we reject what the American people have said and how they voted. That's a treasonous act. And there were 147 Republicans who did this, including Andy Biggs, who only wants Republicans at his town hall. The American people, I know a lot of people who didn't vote. They should have voted. They'll never stay home again.
Jasmine Mooney is a Canadian citizen who had a work visa, no criminal record, and had been traveling back and forth between Canada and California without any complications until she says she was suddenly detained without explanation at the San Diego border when she tried to reapply for a new visa. Writing in The Guardian, quote, "I was taken to a tiny freezing cement cell with bright fluorescent lights and a toilet. There were 5 other women lying on their mats with aluminum sheets wrapped over them, looking like dead bodies. The guard locked the door behind me. For 2 days, we remained in that cell, only leaving briefly for food. The lights never turned off. We never knew what time it was, and no one answered our questions. No one in the cell spoke English, so I either tried to sleep or meditate to keep from having a mental breakdown, excuse me. I didn't trust the food, so I fasted, assuming I wouldn't be there long." She added, quote, "I was told to shower, given a jail uniform, fingerprinted, and interviewed. I begged for information. How long will I be here? I don't know your case," the man said. "Could be days, could be weeks. But I'm telling you right now, you need to mentally prepare yourself for months." Ultimately, Mooney says she spent 12 days in detention before she was finally allowed to book herself a flight back home to Canada. Joining us now, Jasmine Mooney. I was blown away by what you wrote in The Guardian. Explain what happened.
I mean, I'm still processing what happened. I got out and it really feels like a dream or a nightmare, but I still really don't know how I ended up there. But now I am really trying to use my voice to tell people what's going on, because I really don't think a lot of people know what's going on in there.
Why weren't you allowed to book yourself a flight back home?
I have no idea. I assume that if there were a denial with my visa, I would just book myself a flight and head back home. Apparently, because I had one denial before and then my other visa was voided. So for some reason, they said that they had to send me back to Canada. And I was literally booking my own flight to go home. And then that's when I was taken, and then I was in there for 12 days, and not a single person talked to me the entire time that I was in there about my case.
Why do you think you were not given the opportunity? Do you feel like you were being used to send a message to others?
You know, I've been trying to come up with every explanation that I can, and I truly don't know. I was in there, I met around 200 other women who, none of us had a criminal record. Everyone's story was different, a lot of the same. A lot of women, I believe, should not be in there. And what I found is the issue wasn't about getting deported. A lot of women admitted that they overstayed their visas. It's just what the issue that they have is the process of getting out of there. It is next to impossible. There is no communication. You do not have an officer to talk to. You can't contact your lawyers or your friends or your family. I was transferred twice in 2 weeks, which is an awful experience. There were girls in there who had been transferred 8 times in a couple weeks. So the whole system just felt super rigged to keep us in there. That's what it felt like.
Well, because you write This is an interesting part of the article. You say companies like CoreCivic and GEO Group receive government funding based on the number of people they detain, which is why they lobby for stricter immigration policies. It's a lucrative business. CoreCivic made over $560 million from ICE contracts in a single year. In 2024, GEO Group made more than $763 million from ICE contracts. Do you believe that you were kept in there because you were a moneymaker?
Yes, I do. I believe that all the women in there are kept in there as long as possible, transferred around, because it's a business and they make money off of us. That's the only explanation that I could come up with, because I said from day one I would pay for my ticket to go home. The amount of wasted resources that I witnessed in there, the inhumane conditions, they did everything they can to cut costs. I was given one plastic spoon and one styrofoam cup to last the stay. It was when you start putting the pieces together, that is what I felt and came up with.
Do you have any plans to travel back to the United States?
You know, I love America. I love my friends in America. I am extremely devastated. I got a 5-year ban for trying to apply for my visa legally, right? So right now I'm just trying to be a voice and bring light to this in hopes that someone who can make a change to this system cares and will listen and will sit down and see what's going on, because I want to believe that the administration doesn't know what's going on in there. Like I said, it is such a waste of resources. I met a girl in there that was there for 10 months in those conditions. And I was there for 2 weeks. I'm Canadian. I have a Canadian passport. I had media, friends, family, lawyers, everyone using all of their resources to get me out. And it still took me 12 days. So can you possibly imagine what the other girls in there who don't have my resources, who don't have my privilege, are going through?
Yeah, Jasmine Mooney, you said it right there. I encourage everybody to read your article in The Guardian. It's a harrowing tale. Thank you so much for joining us.